If the same things keep happening to you, maybe the problem isn't the world. Maybe it's the mirror you refuse to look into. Have you ever noticed how certain situations just keep coming back? The same type of person who disappoints you. The same pattern of abandonment disguised as circumstance. The same visceral feeling that no matter how hard you try to change cities, jobs, social circles, you always end up in the same emotional place. And then you blame fate, bad luck, misfortune, the universe conspiring against you. But what if I told you that the universe isn't against you? What if in fact it's trying to show you something you've been avoiding looking at for years, maybe even your whole life? Freud called this the compulsion to repeat. The unconscious mind recreates the same painful scenarios, not because you are masochistic or self-destructive by nature, but because it still believes that this time you will finally resolve what was left unresolved in the past. The problem is that you don't resolve it. You just change the setting, change the characters, and keep repeating the same emotional script. And the more you repeat it, the more you convince yourself that the problem is outside, that the world is unfair, that people are all the same, that you were born under an unlucky star. But the truth is different, and it hurts much more than accepting that you are unlucky. The truth is that you are the author of the repetition. Not in the sense that you want to suffer, but in the sense that there is a part of you, deeply unconscious, that keeps recreating the same emotional conditions because they are familiar. And familiarity, even when it is painful, offers a false sense of control. It's as if your mind says, I prefer the pain I know to the uncertainty of the unknown. So you sabotage yourself. You make the wrong choices, you repeat. And until you face this, until you stop looking outward and finally turn your gaze inward, the universe will continue to give you the same lesson in increasingly painful ways until you finally learn, because it doesn't make mistakes. It just insists. The first thing you need to understand is that no one sees their own patterns while they are inside them. It's like trying to read the label from inside the bottle. You are so immersed in your way of feeling, reacting, choosing, that everything seems natural, normal, inevitable. You look at your life and think, that's just how things are. But they're not. That's how things have been. Because you unconsciously keep recreating the same emotional conditions that lead you to the same result. Think about it. How many times have you entered a relationship thinking that this time it will be different, only to realize months later that you are experiencing the same dynamics as before? Maybe the person is physically different, has a different profession, a different accent, but the feeling is the same. That need to prove your worth, that silent fear of being abandoned, that constant tension of never being enough. And when it ends, you swear that the problem was the other person, that you got unlucky again. But was it really bad luck? Or did you deep down choose someone who would put you in exactly the same emotional place you already know? Because the unknown, even if it's potentially better, terrifies you? Or maybe it's at work. You change companies, change fields, even change careers, but you always end up in the same type of environment. There's always that boss who doesn't value you. There's always that colleague who sabotages you. There's always that feeling that no matter how hard you try, you're never seen. And you start to believe that this is just how the corporate world is, that there's no place where you'll be recognized. But what if the problem isn't the job market? What if you unconsciously put yourself in positions where invisibility is guaranteed? Because deep down, you're terrified of being truly seen, because being seen means being judged, and being judged means running the risk of being rejected. So you hide but complain about the shadow, and it doesn't stop there. Think about friendships. How many times have you found yourself giving much more than you received? Always available, always present, always solving other people's problems. But when you need help, no one shows up, and you feel used, discarded, invisible. But instead of questioning the pattern, you just look for new friendships and recreate the same dynamic. Why? Because you learned at some point in your life that your value lies in what you do for others, not in who you are. So you give of yourself to the point of exhaustion, hoping that this time someone will finally see you, but no one sees you. Because the people you choose are precisely those who will use you, because that's what you unconsciously allow. The great illusion is to think that things happen to you, that you are just a passive recipient of life's circumstances. But the truth is that you are an active participant, even when you don't realize it. Every choice you make, every yes and every no you give, every person you allow into or out of your life, all of this is being filtered by an invisible belief system that you have built up over the years. And this system was put together for the most part from painful experiences that you never fully processed. So what happens? You spend your whole life reacting to old wounds as if they were still open, because in a way they are. You know that phrase, you attract what you are. It's a bit of a cliche, but it hides a profound philosophical truth. It's not about energy or vibration in a mystical sense. It's about psychological coherence. You don't attract random people and situations. You attract what confirms what you already believe about yourself. If you believe deep down that you don't deserve to be loved, you will find people who treat you as if you don't deserve it. If you believe that the world is hostile, you will interpret even neutral gestures as threats. And then you say, see, I knew it. But you didn't know. You created it. And the scariest thing is that this happens completely unconsciously. You don't wake up in the morning thinking, today I'm going to sabotage my happiness again. No, you just act on autopilot, guided by fears and beliefs you don't even know you have. And life, patient and relentless, keeps holding up the same mirror to you until you finally stop, look at it, and ask, what is it in me that keeps creating this? Think of it as a reality filter. You don't see the world as it is, you see the world as you are. If you carry a wound of rejection, you will interpret neutral situations as rejection. If you have a deep belief of inadequacy, you will sabotage opportunities before you even try, just so you don't risk failing and confirming what you already believe. And then you say, I knew it wouldn't work. But it wasn't the universe against you. It was you against yourself. And you know what's most painful? It's that this repetition is not conscious. You truly believe that you are changing, that you are trying new things, that you are doing your best. But what you're actually doing is changing the scenarios and keeping the script the same. It's like watching the same movie with different actors and expecting a different ending. It's not going to happen. Because the problem isn't with the actors, it's with the script you keep giving them. But why do we repeat? What is so powerful about this compulsion that keeps us stuck in the same cycles, even when they destroy us? The answer lies in the most inaccessible place in your mind. And that is precisely why it continues to control you. Freud had a disturbing theory. Human beings do not repeat for pleasure, but out of a psychological need to dominate what once dominated them. He called this the compulsion to repeat. And it works something like this. When you go through a traumatic experience, and here trauma doesn't have to be something extreme, it can be rejection, humiliation, emotional abandonment. Your mind can't fully process what happened. The pain remains there, suspended, unresolved, and the unconscious, in a desperate attempt to resolve what was left unresolved, recreates similar situations. The unconscious logic is, if I relive this, maybe this time I'll get a different outcome. This time, I'm in control. This time, I win. But that's not how it works. Because you're not really trying to resolve the trauma. You're just repeating the feeling of it. And every time you repeat it unconsciously, you reinforce the pattern. It's like a poorly healed scar that you keep scratching. Instead of healing, it only gets deeper. And the worst part is that the more you repeat it, the more natural it seems. You start to believe that pain is part of who you are, that this is how love works, that this is how human relationships are, that you were born to suffer, to be misunderstood, to always be one step behind. And then repetition ceases to be a defense mechanism and becomes an identity. Let me give you an example. Imagine a child who grew up feeling that they had to work hard to get attention, because their parents were always busy, tired, emotionally absent. This child learns very early on that love is conditional. That affection is something that is earned through performance, usefulness, being good enough. And she carries this into adulthood without even realizing it. So in relationships, she always chooses emotionally unavailable people because that's what she knows. They strive, give of themselves, try to prove all the time that they deserve to be loved. And when the person leaves, because let's face it, no one can carry the emotional weight of another person forever, they feel that familiar pain. I wasn't enough. And instead of questioning the pattern, they just look for another unavailable person and start the cycle over again. But here's the crucial point. She doesn't choose these people out of masochism. She chooses them because deep down, she's trying to rewrite her childhood story. She wants to prove to herself that if she tries hard enough, she'll finally receive the love she never got. She wants to win this time. But you can't win a game whose rules were written decades ago by a wounded child. And until she looks inside and processes that original pain, that first rejection, that first abandonment, she will continue to recreate the same dynamic with different people until she convinces herself that the problem lies with them and not with the pattern she perpetuates. And look, it's not just in romantic relationships. This happens in friendships, in family dynamics, in the workplace. Think of the person who always ends up being exploited by friends, who always gives more than they receive, who is always available, but is never anyone's priority. They complain, suffer, feel used, but they keep saying yes to everyone. Why? Because deep down they believe that the only value they have is what they offer, that if they stop being useful, they will be discarded. So they repeatedly put themselves in positions of emotional inferiority, not because they want to suffer, but because they are trying to prove that one day someone will value them for what they do. since they never learned to be valued for who they are. Or think of that person who always causes trouble, who is always in conflict, always feeling attacked, always fighting with someone, and she swears that the world is against her, that people are jealous, fake, mean. But is that really true? Or does she unconsciously provoke these conflicts because she grew up in an environment where love and attention only came through drama, where the only way to be seen was by creating a crisis? So she carries this into adulthood and unconsciously recreates the same dynamic. She needs conflict to feel alive, to feel relevant. And then she blames others, when in fact she is the one sowing the seeds of discord, not out of malice, but because it is the only emotional language she knows. Repetition is not a bug. It is a failed attempt at healing. The problem is that the unconscious does not know how to heal. It only knows how to reenact. It has no creativity. It only has memory. So it takes that old pain, that original wound, and continues to put you in situations that remind you of that pain in the hope that you will finally resolve it. But you don't resolve it. You just react. And every time you react instead of responding consciously, you are reinforcing the pattern. You are saying to the unconscious, "This works. Keep going." And you know what's most cruel? It's that the more you repeat, the more you convince yourself that this is your essence, that you are like this, that you were born to be rejected, to be invisible, to suffer. And then repetition ceases to be a psychological defense mechanism and becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You become what you fear most, not because fate wanted it that way, but because you unconsciously built your own prison and lost the key. And as long as you don't bring light to what is hidden, you will remain trapped in this loop. You will continue to think that the world is cruel, when in fact it is you who is trapped inside a narrative written by a version of yourself that no longer exists, but still controls your steps. And worse, you don't even know you're being controlled. But the unconscious does not act alone. There is something bigger going on, something Jung called synchronicity, and it can completely change the way you see your life. Jung had a different view from Freud, and perhaps a more unsettling one. For him, repetition did not only happen inside your head, it manifested itself outside as well. He called this synchronicity, meaningful external events that coincide in a seemingly inexplicable way with internal states. It is not cause and effect in the classical sense. It is as if the external world organizes itself to reflect back to you what is happening in your unconscious. And before you think this is mysticism, it is not. It's phenomenology. It's clinical observation of something that happens with disturbing frequency, and that you've probably experienced but never knew how to name. Think about how many times you were going through a specific emotional moment, and out of nowhere, you started encountering people, situations, or even information that seemed tailor-made for that moment. You're questioning a relationship, and suddenly 3 different friends mention breakups. You're thinking about changing careers, and in the same week, an unexpected offer comes up. You're dealing with an old wound, and coincidentally, you reconnect with someone from the past who was connected to that pain. And you call it coincidence. But Jung would say, there is no coincidence. There is synchronicity, the unconscious manifesting itself through external reality. And here's the hardest part to swallow. The world isn't just reflecting what you think, it's reflecting what you are, especially the parts you deny. Jung called this the shadow, everything you repress, reject, don't want to admit about yourself. And the shadow doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It leaks out. It manifests itself outside of you, through other people, through situations, through patterns that you swear you didn't create. Because you didn't consciously create them, but unconsciously you fed them. You know that person you hate, that unbearable coworker, that family member who irritates you just by existing, that ex you can't forgive. Jung would say, look closely, because what bothers you about the other person is probably something you don't accept in yourself. It's not that you are like that person. It's that there is a part of you repressed and denied that resembles them. And the universe, kindly or not, puts that person in front of you so you can see what is hidden. But instead of looking inward, you project, you blame, you walk away. And then the universe sends another person with the same energy until you finally get the message. Think about it. If you always attract controlling people, maybe it's because you have an unresolved relationship with control. Either you try to control everything to feel safe, or you give up all control so you don't have to take responsibility. If you always end up in competitive and hostile environments, maybe it's because you carry an internal hostility that you've never admitted. If you always feel betrayed, it may be because you yourself don't trust anyone. And that distrust creates a tension that eventually manifests as actual betrayal. And it's not just about people, it's about situations too. Think about how many times you swore you would never again do something, never again enter into a toxic relationship, Never again accept a job that devalues you. Never again allow someone to treat you badly. And months later, you're in exactly the same situation, just with different names. And you ask yourself, how did I let this happen again? But the truth is, you didn't let it happen. You created the conditions for it to happen. Because there is something in you, something unresolved, that still needs that dynamic. And until you integrate it, until you look at the shadow and admit that it exists, the universe will continue to put you in situations that force you to face it. This is not punishment. It is not karma in the popular sense. It is existential pedagogy. Life isn't hurting you on purpose. It's trying to teach you something you keep refusing to learn. And synchronicity is the language it uses. It's not a language of words. It's a language of patterns, of repetitions, of mirrors. And the more you resist, the louder the universe speaks, until eventually it screams. And then you collapse. And then you finally listen. But here's the problem. Most people listen, but they don't hear. They notice the pattern. They recognize that something is wrong, but instead of looking inward, they keep looking for answers outside. I need to find the right person. I need to find the right job. I need to move to the right place. As if the problem were geographical. As if the problem were other people. But it's not. The problem is what you carry. And you can change countries, social circles, your whole life. But if you don't change what's inside, the universe will recreate the same scenario, only with new actors. And you know what's most fascinating? The more you deny the shadow, the more it intensifies. It's like trying to hold a ball underwater. The more you force it down, the more pressure it builds up until you get tired and it explodes upwards with everything. So you can pretend you're not controlling, but you'll continue to attract people who challenge you on that point. You can pretend you're not afraid of abandonment, but you'll continue to sabotage relationships before they get too serious. You can pretend you don't care about recognition, but you'll continue to feel invisible and resentful. Synchronicity is not magic, it's a mirror. And the universe is not trying to destroy you. It's trying to wake you up. Every person who irritates you, every situation that repeats itself, every uncomfortable coincidence, all of this is an invitation to look within, to ask, what is this showing me about myself? Not about the world, not about other people, about you. Because as long as you think the problem is outside, you'll keep changing scenery and carrying the same baggage. And sooner or later, that baggage will pull you back down. And this is where most people get stuck. Because looking inward hurts. Admitting that you have a responsibility for what happens to you, not blame but responsibility, is too uncomfortable. It's easier to believe that you are a victim of external forces, that the universe is cruel, that people are bad, that you're just unlucky. But if you really want to change, you need to stop looking for answers outside yourself and start asking the right question. What inside me keeps creating this? And when you finally ask that question without running away from the answer, everything changes. And now we come to the hardest part. The part you don't want to hear. The part that hurts so much that most people spend their entire lives avoiding it. Because the problem isn't that you don't know what's wrong. You do. Deep down, you've always known. The problem is that acknowledging this means letting go of the narrative you've built about who you are. And that narrative, as painful as it may be, protects you from something even worse. Responsibility. Let me give you some concrete examples. You say you want a healthy relationship, but you always choose emotionally unavailable people. Why? Because true intimacy terrifies you. Because being seen completely, with all your flaws, your insecurities, your ugly parts, is terrifying. So you choose someone who will never really see you. And then you can complain that no one understands you, but without having to risk being truly known. It's a defense mechanism. You sabotage yourself before you can be rejected. You create distance and call it bad luck. Or you say you want to be recognized at work, but you never take a stand. You never speak your mind. You never take risks. You always stay in your comfort zone, invisible, thinking, at least they won't criticize me. And then you complain that no one values you. But does no one value you? Or are you so afraid of being judged that you prefer not to be seen? Because if no one sees you, no one can reject you. And so you remain in this limbo, frustrated by being invisible, but terrified of the possibility of being noticed. Or you say you want true friendships, but only engage in superficial relationships. You never show vulnerability. You never ask for help. You're always fine, always solving other people's problems, but never letting anyone in. And then you feel alone. But it's not loneliness, it's self-imposed isolation. Because if you don't let anyone really get to know you, you never run the risk of being abandoned. And then you can say people are fake, but the truth is, you never gave them a chance to be real with you. See the pattern? You're not a victim of circumstances. You are their architect. And the most painful thing is that you do this unconsciously, guided by fear so old that you don't even remember where they came from. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough, fear of being too much, fear of being seen, fear of being ignored. And these fears build invisible walls around you, walls that you call protection, but which are actually prisons. And you know what the hardest truth is? Until you admit this, nothing will change. You can read all the self-help books in the world. You can go to therapy without real commitment. You can move to a new city, change jobs, join a new social circle. But if you don't look at these fears and integrate them, if you don't accept that you play an active role in creating your patterns, you will keep repeating them. Only each time it will hurt a little more, because life turns up the volume until you finally listen. And look, this isn't about blame. I'm not saying you wanted to be hurt. I'm not saying you deserve to suffer. I'm saying you have responsibility. And there's a huge difference between the two. Guilt paralyzes you. Guilt makes you feel small, inadequate, incapable of change. Guilt traps you in the past, makes you dwell on every mistake, every failure, every time you weren't enough. But responsibility frees you. Because when you assume that you have an active role in your life, you also assume that you have the power to change it. And that's the turning point. Because as long as you see yourself as a victim, you are at the mercy of the world. You have no control. You just react. You wait for things to get better, for people to change, for the universe to finally give you a break. But when you recognize that even unconsciously you have participated in the creation of your patterns, you regain power. You stop being a passenger and become the driver. And then then you can make different choices. It's not easy, it's not fast, it's not comfortable, but it is possible. And there's something else. Most people are afraid to look inside because they think they'll find something monstrous, something so horrible that it will confirm all your worst beliefs about yourself. But do you know what you really find? You find a wounded child. You find someone who learned very early on that the world was not safe, that love was conditional, that vulnerability was dangerous. And that child created survival strategies, and those strategies worked at the time. They kept you alive, they protected you. But now, decades later, those same strategies are destroying you, because what saved you at age 7 is imprisoning you at age 30. And if you feel that this reflection is stirring something deep inside you, something you've been avoiding for too long, maybe it's time to stop doing it alone. Because self-knowledge is powerful, but it's also lonely. And there are things you can't see about yourself, no matter how hard you try. There are blind spots that only someone from the outside can point out. There are wounds that need a safe space to be processed. And that's why processes like therapy, mentoring, or even support groups exist. Not because you're weak, but because real growth rarely happens in a vacuum. If you want to break this cycle for real, consider seeking help. Not as a last resort, but as a conscious first step for someone who has decided to stop repeating. Because you are not a victim of the pattern. You are its author. And that, as scary as it may seem, is the best news you could receive. Because if you created it, you can uncreate it. If you built it, you can deconstruct it. If you wrote this script, you can rewrite it. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about now. So let's clarify one thing once and for all. Taking responsibility does not mean blaming yourself. It does not mean that everything that happened to you was your fault. It does not mean that you deserve to be hurt, abandoned, or devalued. It does not mean that you consciously chose to suffer. It means only one thing. You recognize that, even without knowing it, you played a role in constructing your patterns. And more importantly, you have the power to deconstruct them. Guilt traps you in the past. It makes you dwell on things, makes you feel small, makes you believe that you are too flawed to change. Guilt is paralyzing. It puts you in a position of powerlessness where all you can do is lament and punish yourself. But responsibility throws you into the present. It gives you agency. It tells you, yes, you created this. And that's exactly why you can create something different. It's liberating. It's scary, but it's real. Nietzsche had a brutal concept called amor fati, love of fate. Not in the sense of passively accepting what happens as if you were a leaf in the wind, but of embracing life exactly as it is, including the pain, and turning it into fuel to become who you really can be. He said that a strong person is not one who has never suffered, but one who has transformed suffering into wisdom, one who has used pain as raw material to build something greater. And that is only possible when you stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as the protagonist. He also spoke of the eternal return. What if you had to live this life again, exactly the same way, infinite times? Would you accept it, or would you change something now? And that question is not rhetorical. It is visceral. It forces you to look at your life with brutal honesty. Because if you look at your life today and realize that you are living on autopilot, repeating the same mistakes, recreating the same pains, you have a choice. Continue like this and accept that it will repeat itself forever, or break the cycle now. Not tomorrow, not when you are ready, now. Because ready never comes. What comes is collapse if you keep waiting. And breaking the cycle is not about grand heroic gestures. It's not about waking up one day and being a completely different person. It's not about turning the key and never making mistakes again. It's about micro breaks. It's about noticing the emotional trigger and instead of reacting automatically, pausing, breathing, choosing differently. It's about noticing that you're about to fall into the same pattern and this time saying no, even if it hurts, even if it's uncomfortable, even if the old part of you is screaming to go back to what's familiar. Because the familiar, even when it's painful, offers an illusion of security. You know that pain. You know how to survive it. You've mapped out every detail, every phase, every sensation. But the unknown could be better, but it could also be worse. And the fear of worse keeps you stuck in the bad but familiar. So you repeat, and repeat, and repeat, until the pain of the known becomes greater than the fear of the unknown. And then, only then, do you move. But what if you didn't wait to reach that point? What if you chose to move before the collapse? What if you decided today that you're going to break the pattern? Not because you're at rock bottom, but because you finally understand that you can. And look, no one said it would be easy. You will stumble. You will make mistakes. There will be days when you will fall back into the same emotional place. There will be moments when you will doubt whether it's worth it. There will be nights when you will miss the old pattern, as destructive as it was, because at least it was predictable. But the difference is that this time, you are aware, and awareness changes everything. Because when you are aware, you are no longer on autopilot, you are present, and presence is power. Think about it. Every time you repeated in the past, you did it without knowing. You were blind, guided by unconscious fears, by unhealed wounds, by beliefs you didn't even know you had. Now you see. And seeing hurts, but it also liberates. Because now you can choose. You can choose not to respond to that aggressive email in the same tone. You can choose not to enter into that relationship that already started with all the red flags up. You can choose not to accept that job that pays well but destroys you inside. You can choose not to put yourself again in the position of being invisible, used, disposable. You can choose differently, and each different choice is a crack in the pattern. And cracks, when accumulated, break entire structures. But there is one thing you need to understand. Choosing differently will cause discomfort. It will cause fear. It will cause that feeling of this is wrong, even when it is right, because your nervous system is programmed for the old pattern. It recognizes that as normal, as home. So when you act differently, your body goes on alert. It thinks you're in danger. And then you feel anxiety, insecurity, the urge to go back. And that's when most people give up. They interpret the discomfort as a sign that they're on the wrong path, when in fact it's exactly the opposite. Discomfort is a sign that you are breaking through, and breaking through always hurts before it liberates. So if you're feeling that now, that discomfort, that urge to close the video and pretend you didn't hear any of this, that internal resistance that tells you this isn't for me, stay. Because it is precisely this discomfort that you need to get through. It is what shows you where the change is. And if you leave now, you'll go back to the same place. But if you stay, if you allow this reflection to transform you, you'll leave different. Not healed, not perfect, but aware. And awareness is the first step to freedom. But how do you interrupt what you've always done automatically? How do you stop reacting on autopilot when the trigger is so ingrained that you don't even realize it's been activated? The answer is simpler and more difficult than you might think. Awareness. But not that superficial awareness of, oh, I know I do that. No, it's the deep visceral awareness that catches you in the middle of the act and makes you stop. That makes you feel the discomfort before you act. That gives you that second of hesitation where finally you can choose differently. And it all starts with naming. You need to name the pattern, not generically but specifically. It's not I always suffer in relationships. It's I always choose people who are not emotionally available because real intimacy terrifies me. So I sabotage myself before I can be rejected. See the difference? One is vague, victimizing and hopeless. The other is precise, responsible, and points exactly where you need to look. And when you name it, you take the pattern out of the unconscious and bring it into the light. And in the light, it loses its power. After naming it, you need to recognize the trigger. Every pattern has a flashpoint, that precise moment when you leave the present and go into automatic mode. It could be a word someone said. It could be a look. It could be a feeling in your chest. It could be the silence of someone you expected to respond. And in that moment, something inside you clicks. And suddenly you're no longer reacting to the real situation. You're reacting to a wound from 10, 20 years ago. You're reacting to the child who was ignored, rejected, abandoned. And the person in front of you doesn't even know what's going on because it's not about them. It never was. So here's the job. When the trigger fires, you stop. You don't act. You don't respond. You don't run away. You just feel. And that's brutal. Because feeling the discomfort without reacting is one of the hardest things you can do. Your body wants to act. Your mind wants to solve it. Your ego wants to defend itself. But you stay there, in the middle of the emotional storm, and let it pass, because it always passes. The feeling is never permanent. And when you survive the discomfort without acting in the usual way, something changes. You prove to yourself that you can choose. And choosing differently doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be a radical change in your life overnight. It can be small. It can be just not responding to that message in the heat of the moment. It can be saying no when you always said yes. It can be staying home when you always ran away to the company of anyone, just so you wouldn't be alone. It can be allowing someone to help you when you always made a point of proving that you can handle everything on your own. These are micro breaks, and each one is a declaration of war against the pattern. But there's one thing you need to understand. The pattern will fight back, because it's been there for years, maybe decades, protecting you in the only way it knows how. So when you break away, fear comes rushing in. Anxiety explodes. Your mind starts to convince you that you're making a mistake, that you should go back, that the old pattern was better. And that's when you need to stand your ground the most, because that's the pattern's last line of defense. It's its desperate cry trying to pull you back. And if you resist, if you can endure the discomfort just a little longer, it weakens. And the next time, it gets easier. And the next time, even easier. Until one day you realize you're no longer repeating, you are living. And there is another essential step. Processing, because it's not enough to just stop acting on the pattern. You need to look at the original wound and finally let it exist. This can be through therapy. It can be through writing. It can be through deep conversations with someone you trust. It can even be through a moment alone where you finally allow that old pain to surface and be felt. Not avoided, not buried, but felt. Because the only way to heal a wound is to clean it. And cleaning hurts, but then it heals. And when it heals, you stop infecting every new situation with the pus of the past. So yes, you can break the cycle. It's not magic, it's not instantaneous. It's not painless, but it is possible. And every person who has done it, every person who has stopped repeating and started living, will tell you the same thing. It was worth it. Every second of discomfort, every moment of doubt, every difficult night, it was all worth it. Because on the other side is not perfection, it's freedom. And freedom, even with all its risks and uncertainties, is infinitely better than the prison you know. And when you finally break through, something extraordinary happens. Not just inside you, but around you too. And here's the most beautiful and strangest part of it all. When you change inside, the world changes outside. Not because the universe is magical or because you attracted good things, but because you stopped creating the conditions for suffering. You stopped choosing unavailable people. You stopped putting yourself in positions of invisibility. You stop repeating the same destructive patterns, and suddenly life starts to give you something different in return. Not because it has changed, but because you have changed. Remember synchronicity? That phenomenon where the external reflects the internal? Well, it works both ways. When you were stuck in the pattern, the world gave you situations that confirmed it. But when you break out of it, the world begins to reflect the new version of you. And then opportunities arise that you never saw before. Not because they didn't exist, but because you weren't ready to see them. Different people appear, different conversations, different possibilities. And for the first time you realize the universe wasn't against you. It was just insisting until you learned. And that doesn't mean life will be easy. It doesn't mean you'll never suffer again or that all your problems will disappear. It means you stop creating your own suffering. It means that when pain comes, and it will come, because that's how life is, you'll know it's not the universe punishing you. It's just life being life. And you'll have the tools to get through it. You'll have awareness, you will have choice, and you will be sure that on the other side, you will remain whole. And do you know what is most liberating? You stop needing the world to save you. You stop waiting for someone to come and solve everything for you. You stop seeking external validation to fill the inner void, because you finally understand what you were looking for outside has always been inside. The love you wanted to receive, you can give yourself. The recognition you sought, you can offer yourself. The acceptance you begged for, you can grant yourself. And when you do that, when you finally become what you were looking for, the whole world changes. Because then you stop attracting people who will use you, because you stopped offering yourself as a tool. You stop attracting toxic environments because you stop tolerating toxicity. You stop attracting drama because you stop needing it to feel alive. And suddenly you realize life can be light. It can be simple. It can be good. Not all the time, but enough. And you can trust it. Not because it's perfect, but because you know that whatever happens, you'll be able to handle it. And the universe? It has always been an ally. From day one. Every painful repetition, every destructive pattern, every situation you swore was bad luck, all of it was an invitation. An invitation to look within, to question, to grow, to become who you really can be, not who fear has conditioned you to be. And now that you understand this, now that you've finally seen the message, it all makes sense. Every pain had a purpose. Every mistake was a lesson. Every repetition was a chance to finally get it right. And you didn't waste any of them, because they all brought you here. So, the next time something repeats itself in your life, and it will because life is cyclical, don't ask, why me again? Ask, what do I still need to see? Because the answer has always been where you never wanted to look, inside yourself. And looking inside is not weakness, it's courage. It's the bravest act there is, because it's easy to blame the world. It's easy to play the victim. It's easy to keep repeating and pretending you have no choice. But taking responsibility, looking at your own shadow, breaking the pattern even when everything inside you screams to go back, that's bravery. And you are capable of that. You always have been. The universe doesn't make mistakes. It just shows you what you don't want to see, until you finally have the courage to look. And when you look, when you really see, you realize you were never alone. You were never lost. You were just finding yourself. And now that you found yourself, now that you finally see yourself, nothing is the same as before, because you are no longer who you were. And the world finally begins to reflect that back to you. So tell me, what are you going to do with this? Are you going to close this video, go back to autopilot and pretend you didn't hear anything? Or are you going to allow this reflection to transform you? Because the choice has always been yours. It always has been. The universe just insists, but you are the one who decides. And if you feel that this message has touched something deep inside you, that it has touched a wound that you have been carrying for too long, leave a comment. What pattern are you finally ready to break? You don't need to explain the whole story. Just name it. Because naming it is already the first step. If you've made it this far, you've already taken a step beyond most people. You watch the videos. You reflect on each idea. Now the question is, how far do you want to go with this? If you want to take the next step and truly apply this knowledge to your life, the codes of the White Rabbit are ready for you. The link is in the video description. Remember, success is a decision. The choice is yours. Count on me and follow the White Rabbit.